Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Southland's podcast for men. We call it Locker Room. We're trying to talk about the right things in the right way. And in this series, this season, we are talking specifically all season long about men and marriage. And we've had young Chapman Bean on, who was married for all of about 5 minutes before we got him on. And today I've gone to the opposite end of the spectrum, invited Gary Black to join us. So welcome back, Gary.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, how long have you been married?
47 years.
47 years, longer than Chapman. So
47 years in July.
In July. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, you have been a pastor for a long time. You've been married for a long time. And so we wanted to kind of get some of your wisdom. We won't be able to learn all of it in the next 20 minutes or so, but we want to get some of it if we can today. Sure. I thought it'd be fun if maybe you tell people, you and I get the chance to sit around and talk all the time, but your first date story you told me recently with Linda, your wife, really made me laugh. So I thought it'd be a good one for you to share with the men.
Okay, well, the backstory is that her mother did not want her to date me because I came from a bit of a messed up home, I guess you would say. My father had left, and things just weren't good. We had gone through a bankruptcy, and I was just kind of out there. But a friend of mine invited me to church, and I started going, and ended up getting in a youth choir, which is really ridiculous if you had any idea. But somebody on the risers in front of me, 2 people over, caught my eye, and it was Linda. So I got to know her a little bit, talked to her. She wasn't really interested at first in dating at all. And she was always busy anytime I called her. She was always cleaning out her closet. I always wonder. I said one time, "You've got the cleanest closet in Louisville. You know, can we do something on another day when you're not cleaning out your closet?" But anyway, I finally realized her mom didn't want her to date me, and so her mother, when Linda did decide we would go out, would set rules and say, "Well, you can't. You know, if he brings you home from school, that's a date. And you can only have 2 dates a week." So anyway, our first date was the first time I'd been to her house to pick her up. And I arrived on a motorcycle, which I had just rebuilt.
And, so at any point did it cross your mind?
No.
It didn't even cross your mind. Motorcycle might not be the best.
Yeah. No, nothing crossed my mind in those days.
I love it.
So I picked her up, and she was a little nervous, you might say. And it was a Honda 160, so it wasn't like a big bike with, nice ride on it. But at any rate, we got about a mile from the house, and the engine blew. And literally just started grinding and then stopped. And I, of course, didn't know what to do. So we were about, I guess 1.5 miles or 2 miles from my house. Dixie Highway, which is a 4-lane road, it's the road back then for everything. And so we walked it home. She walked along with me on the side of the road, and I pushed it for 2 miles. And
what time of year was it?
It was in the early summer.
So it was a little warm.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. And so anyway, we got there. I borrowed my mother's Volkswagen 65 Beetle, and took her to our first date. We were going to go to the Louisville Zoo. Real romantic. So we stopped at McDonald's on the way and got lunch. We went to Iroquois Park nearby and tried to eat. We were both too nervous. And so we tossed our lunches and went on to the zoo. And it was a great day. I chased her around the whole day trying to take her picture. She didn't want me to take her picture. To this day, she still never wants me to take her picture. So, that's how it got started. And everything from there just seemed to take off.
So the second date, did you pick her up on the motorcycle, or did you just go ahead and take Mom's Volkswagen?
The Volkswagen was my new mode of transportation, yeah. The motorcycle I ended up eventually giving to her brother. I think I got $50 for it, but I called it giving. And he took the parts off of it because he happened to have a Honda 160.
There you go.
So anyway. So that's kind of that. The 25 years later, 29 years later, we got married 4 years later, but on our 25th anniversary, I decided to relive our first date without the motorcycle. And picked her up, took her to McDonald's, same McDonald's, went to the same park, sat at the same picnic table, went to the zoo, had a great time. And then after that, went back to McDonald's to get a shake. As I said, that's the reason we're going to stop there. And so then I was able to give her a 1-carat diamond ring to celebrate our anniversary. So
awesome.
A lot of couples go to Hawaii or France or Paris, and we went to McDonald's in Louisville. But yeah, so that's how it happened.
So, 25-year there, 25-year mark, and now over 40 years of marriage. How'd you get there?
Well, just think of it as a pinball machine. You zigzag and bounce from here to here, and you react and you respond, and you take whatever life throws at you, and you course correct. And so it's a destination. It's a journey. It's not a destination, and it's ongoing. It doesn't stop.
When you think about, that young guy who hopped on a motorcycle and, went and picked her up, and then 4 years later you married to her.
Yeah.
So what were your expectations going into marriage, and how did that compare to what reality ended up being?
Well, I had no clue. And I don't think she did either. All I knew was that I had found the kindest individual that I'd ever met. And I was not raised around a lot of kindness.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what attracted me to her. Mm-hmm. She was gentle, always in control. I was volatile, never in control. And but I was introspective, and she seemed to be attracted to that. And I wrote poetry and things of that nature that most other high school guys didn't do. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, finding her is the greatest find of my life. And to this day, I call her Jesus with a skirt on. And she is the best embodiment of Jesus that I've ever seen.
Well, whenever you talk about Linda, you always, you light up. You always talk about her so, kindly is one way to say it, but it's clear that you esteem her, when you speak about her. And I've always thought that was very admirable about you. When you sit and talk to married couples, when you talk to men who are married and they're struggling and having problems, what have, in all the years of ministry, you've seen it all. What are some of the common themes you see men dealing with in their marriage?
Yeah, I think, I didn't always esteem her. I was controlling and angry in the early years. I say we've been married 37 wonderful years, and 37 out of 47 is not bad, So
was it specifically the first 10 that were most
the first
challenging?
10 were really challenging, much more for her than for me. I was more of the problem than the solution. But I would say that the problem that most men have with marriage is they kind of check it off their list. They got it done. And so now I'm going to move on to career and all the other pursuits. And for a woman, they've experienced all that affection, admiration, sensitivity, listening, laughing together. Now they're married. He's going to work. Maybe she's going to work and he's staying home.
Mm-hmm.
But one of them is leaving and going to pursue something else. And the other one is left behind saying, so is it over? I mean,
mm-hmm.
this connection of our souls, is it gone? Now we're like doing the business of life, and that's no fun.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic you bring up there. A lot of people have talked about how men treat relationships almost like a hunting, type experience.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I've got her, secured her, now I'm good. Yeah. It's almost like a man can view marriage as a finish line, and a woman can view marriage as a starting line.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Some confusion of like, I thought we arrived, and you're like, I thought we just got started. Where do you go?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you help a man kind of recalibrate? Midstream. Sounds like you had to do that in many ways 10 years in. So what's it take to recalibrate?
I'm kind of hardcore on this, but I always say that if you don't like what your wife is, consider what you've done to help her become that. Mm. And I hold men responsible for setting a tone in a relationship and a positivity in a relationship that enables it to flourish. Most men don't do well in those areas.
Yeah.
And rather than just admit that they don't understand what they need to be and do and get help, they just keep throwing different things at the wall and hoping something sticks. And so, I think men need to, I like to say, if you want your wife to be a thoroughbred, don't treat her like a nag. And, cherish her, value her. It took me years to learn to understand that those weren't just good things for me to do, but those were deep needs that she had. And a lot of men just don't understand what a woman needs, period. And that's usually one of the major problems I see in marriage counseling.
So those weren't small words you used to describe yourself in regards to their consequence. So angry, controlling, volatile, things like that. So what happened? Like, what changed? What was there something that was a catalyst for you to go, I've got to address these issues in me so that I can be the kind of husband Linda needs?
There was a catalyst, all right. I wrote a book in 1990 called 8 Weeks to a Better Marriage. I'd been a pastor for, 15 years or so there in Woodford County. And, I taught a class on it, and it was packed, and everybody just said it was great, and they loved the book and this and that. But it hit me one day that I'd never heard Linda say anything about the book. And in fact, I didn't think she even had a copy or had read it. So I asked her one day about the book, and she said, well, to be honest, the book is not the person that I know. And, for my wife to say something like that, it's like, she's trying to prevent World War III or something like that. So at any rate, that really took me back. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, you're one person at the church, you're a different person at home. And I don't know how much longer I can take of that. So what do you mean? She said, well, every day after I drop kids off school, I park on a country road, lay in the front seat with a blanket, and just rest. I thought, what?
Yeah.
What are you? Anyway, so a couple of days talking, and I finally, what I realized was she needed to see a counselor. So I told her, I'd get her a counselor. And so, of course, the counselor, who happened to be a good counselor, realized very quickly that she needed to talk to me. So she called, set up an appointment with me, and the rest, as they say, is history. I began to realize that I had control issues, anger issues. I didn't understand my wife. I knew she didn't understand me in my own mind. And so what changed was that we almost lost our marriage. In fact, she said, if you weren't a pastor, I probably would have left. I don't think she would have remarried, frankly, but she probably would have left. But so that was a wake-up call for me, and that set me on a course of getting help, getting counseling, dealing with father wounds, dealing with anger issues, understanding what my wife needed. I didn't know. No, who teaches you?
Yeah.
My dad never taught me about how to be a good husband.
Yeah.
We never had a conversation. You go to college, never have a class on that. And if there were, you'd wonder who's qualified to teach it.
Right.
So, but at any rate, I had to learn at the age of, I guess I was at that time around 35. Well, how do you do this? Lots of books, lots of reading, lots of discussion with some friends, tons of discussion with my wife.
So how did the anger piece manifest itself in your marriage? I think I know some of the answer to this because we've talked about it before, but, a lot of men struggle with anger. Some men are told they have anger issues, and they're totally blown away by that. They don't get that at all.
I didn't think I was angry at all.
Yeah,
Right.
So, what did that look like for you, and then how did you go about addressing that?
What it looked like was I could never admit that I was wrong, and I had to win every argument. That just crushes a woman's spirit. I didn't, I just thought I was being a good leader. And, I wasn't, and I didn't know that, and I had to learn that. And I told her, I'm going to work on my anger issues. And I read several books, and like I said, I got some counseling. And she said, well, to be really honest, I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can do it. And I said, you could be right, but I'm going to do it for me so that I can do it for you. And so I thought it might take a couple of years of hard work. It took 5. Took 5 years. And I mean 5 years before I really sensed that she felt like she had a new husband. Yeah.
And how do you think Linda would describe you today versus then?
Oh, that's a great question. I think she would say he's my best friend. I think she would say he listens a lot, corrects a little, and cares about me as deeply as anybody on the planet. So I think those would be her answers. If you can get her on the program, you ought to.
Yeah, I was going to say, this would be a classic moment to go, well, I brought Linda here today. Come on out, Linda. Let's see if those answers match up. I think they would. There's going to be men listening to this that are on the threshold. They're one phone call away. There's a commercial on TV right now where it's kind of a satire if everybody could see your internet search history or whatever. And so it's like people in the subway like shouting, I Googled divorce lawyers 12 times today, right. That kind of thing. But there are some men listening to this right now that are that close. They've Googled divorce lawyers, or they're going to make a phone call, or they're just looking for the next thing to occur to be justification to make that phone call. And there could be a million different reasons for that. But generally speaking, knowing there's men listening to this that are thinking that way, what would you say?
I say don't change partners, change yourself. And if you don't understand what that looks like, get help. And forget about changing your wife. Work on you. And you become the best version of you, and you'll discover that your wife is much more attracted to you than she is right now. And that's what I would tell them.
And then there's a bunch of young men listening that aren't married, and maybe some older fellows too that aren't married, or they've been married but they're not now. And all the stats tell us that men are more apprehensive about marriage than ever before. They're getting married later, than ever before. That kind of thing. What would you say to them?
I would say don't worry about getting ready. You're never ready. So if you find a person that you think is compatible and somebody that you feel God has led you to, get married. And don't look back and expect chaos. The tunnel of love is the tunnel of chaos. And you think about it, those theme parks where they have that, and you go in and it's dark. Used to be, there were no lights in those things. You'd go through and you're floating in this little boat or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the way marriage is. I mean, you don't know. Sometimes you don't know from day to day what you're going to do or how you're going to do it or where you're going to end up. But I would say make a commitment, stick to it, and when times get really, really difficult, work on yourself instead of your spouse. You can't change her anyway, but you can change yourself. And I'd say the same thing to a woman, frankly.
Yeah. So. I mean, you've counseled a lot of couples over the years. I mean, you count things. You almost always have a specific number. If you had to guess, how many couples have you counseled in all your time in ministry?
No, I don't know. If I were going to guess, I'd say 500 maybe.
Yeah. And as you've done that over the years, are you seeing any differences between what couples were struggling with 30 years ago, 20 years ago, versus what couples are struggling with today, or is it just nothing new under the sun?
I'd say both and. There's a lot that's nothing new under the sun, but the distractions of today's culture, social media, Netflix, just fill in the blanks, they weren't so much prevalent, in the 70s and 80s, early 90s as they are now. And image management is something that I think both men and women spend much time worrying about. Much time worrying about. I think it's more prevalent today. And so, what do you do when you're trying to manage your image? You're always thinking about you.
Yeah.
And the wife's thinking about her. How do I look? How am I perceived? What friends am I going to have? Are they the kind of friends that will give me the right image that I want, and so on and so forth?
Well, and if you're so concerned about your image, then the person that you're married to affects that dramatically. So you're probably also trying to micromanage what they do and say and how they look and affect your image.
Exactly, yeah.
Which sounds terrible to live stuck in that cycle.
It's two narcissists looking through an invisible glass or a mirror that they think this is a mirror, but it's just another person on the same side who has the same issues that you have.
Yeah.
So you call her a narcissist, and she calls you a narcissist, and you both are.
Yeah, you're both right.
So marriage is about being totally others focused, and putting that person at the center of your life. And Jesus, the Bible says, "Love your wife as Christ loved the church." And I don't know. Last time I checked, Jesus loved the church enough to die for the church. And so if I'm going to love my wife like he did, then I have to be willing to be crucified. And I lay down my rights. I lay down my need to be right. And I make serving her the most important part of my life. Somehow or another, she seems supremely happy when I'm that way. And you know what? I'm really happy when she's that way. And so when we're both that way, we just think it's too good to be true.
Well, that seems like a better place than anywhere to wrap this up. So, Gary, we'll probably have to have you on again sometime in this season. If not in this season, another one soon. Thanks, as always, for coming on.
It's a privilege. Thank you. Yep.
All right, man. Thanks for checking out Locker Room. And if you would, as always, share this with anybody you think it might be valuable to, and we'll catch you next time.